book from that wonderful. And the fourth, Mahesh was a very courageous person. He always stood up and did not matter whom he was speaking to. He was never scared of authority or a position, but he spoke his mind. And he was very interested in the young talent in the country. Somebody like a Pradeep Kapse who's sitting here those days. He was, of course, a board member of Aisha, but Pradeep was those days the one most outstanding graduate engineer trainee. And Mahesh would champion the cause of this young talent and saying, don't get impressed by somebody simply because the person carries a so-called MBA degree or comes from some. But look at the quality of talent amongst the young engineers. And he would always espouse the potential of young people. And he said to me one day, if you treat young people with a lot of respect, give them a lot of responsibility, they will accelerate their growth and they will take care of the future. So invest in young talent early in life. That's something I can go on and on, but it's not about my mentioning all the loving things I experienced with Mahesh. And he was also a tough boss. If he didn't like something, he told it on your face. He didn't want, he always told me, give somebody 12 hours work to do in 6 hours. And what I mentioned to you this morning, that's the best way to develop people. With these words, I'm so happy that we have Sanjay Gupta with us. I have known Sanjay for a long time, and I know that Sanjay, whatever he has done, especially the stories I heard from him when he was president of American Express globally, there are some legendary stories about how service and service excellence is something that Sanjay lived in his life and his career. And Mahesh said two things. If people are inspired from within, if they source inspiration from within, then they will create a service experience around them, a quality experience around them which would be special. So his belief was people source inspiration from within. The old word was intrinsic motivation. But really the person said if the person has that, then person will design the systems and design the technology and design the way to deliver service which will be superior. So his whole life was spent on inspiration.
Different parts of the world, I started getting this niggling feeling.
And they are not able to hear you online. So are you going to be able to fix that? Yeah. In that Are you audible on that? Just give us, tell the audience, just give us a minute, online audience.
They can hear me?
Okay, are you able to hear us now? Yeah, thanks, Norman. Now it's wrong. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So I was for the online audience, I was talking about
They had some problem.
my
They were off.
attempt to discover my
Only now they are on.
about 15 years ago, after having worked for 25 years in a variety of different companies. And I felt that I needed to do something new. And in engaging with the life coach, I realized that I wanted to do something where I give back, but I give back in a way that is not necessarily writing checks, but using my life experiences, my learnings. And I started looking for what I need to do, what I want to do. A lot of people helped me. Anil was, as always, a friend and guide. And I discovered a computer scientist, a man of great brilliance, a Boston, Indian origin computer scientist. And he had innovated certain technologies. And I discovered the possibility of bringing that technology to India to work with government schools to help government school students learn English or become English literate. This was about 12 years ago. I have been doing that work since then. And we started with 100 schools when we began testing the hypothesis, and we are now in more than 100,000 schools. But to reach where I have reached, to do what I have done, and to do this daily and with perseverance, I had to learn many new things. I had to learn, and I'm still learning about the science and the art of education. I had to learn, and I don't think I've learned it all, the new technology that this world is dealing with. I had to learn English too. I knew how to speak, I knew how to write, but I mostly slept through grammar class, so I had to learn English, and I'm still learning. But more importantly, when you work with the government schools, it is a place where angels don't go, right? And it is a hard place. It is a place where every day there is difficulty, there is despair, there is challenge, but you have to stick it out. You have to be like a mountaineer who's climbing and getting hurt, but never stops climbing. Who wants to give up, but doesn't give up. And that is my lesson number one for you. That in doing whatever you have to do, in whichever stage of your life, you have to find your own purpose. And if you find your purpose, whatever that might be, at that stage, in your context, then you can climb your mountain. My second lesson is a story of Peter the Collector. Now, I ran customer servicing for American Express around the world, other than the United States. So we had lots of people servicing lots of customers every day. And one of the things that we would do, we would honor 4 champions, 4 customer champions each year, people who had done remarkable things, people who had provided remarkable service to customers, and take them to the company headquarters in New York and give them a week with the top leadership, with the CEO, show them the city, give them a good time. They would go there with their partners. So Peter the Collector from Sydney, Australia, was one of those people who was taken to New York because he had done something amazing. So on my trip to Sydney, I walked up to the collector's floor and I went to meet Peter, and I remember him. He was a shy young man. And I said to him, Peter, what you did was quite amazing. And what you did definitely earned you the right of being called a champion of the customer. And he was very shy and he said, oh, no, I mean, I'm embarrassed. But you must know what Peter did. Peter called an American Express card member. That gentleman, he was a gentleman, had been a card member for almost 2 decades. And he was a well-spending card member and he paid all his dues on time. But for some reason, the system that tracked people and their payments said This particular gentleman has not paid his car and is overdue by 60 days, so Peter called him. And Peter called him and said, listen, you're a long-standing customer of the company, you paid your dues consistently, but I have to tell you that you haven't paid a large outstanding, and I need to talk to you about it. So this gentleman said, yeah, I know I haven't paid, and I don't think I'll pay for some time. You see, my son has been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. Unfortunately, the insurance company is claiming that this isn't covered. So while I'm fighting with them, I have to pay huge amounts of money. And if you're in one of these countries and you aren't covered by insurance, those bills can be pretty prohibitive. I have to pay huge amounts of money to cover my son's treatment, and I don't think I can pay you guys. So Peter says, I'm really sorry to hear this. I'm really sorry to hear about your son, and I hope he gets better very soon. But here's what we'll do. For the next 3 months, nobody from American Express will call you. And when we do, we'll call you with an installment plan that will allow you to pay back the money in a way that is possible for you. And this is what Peter did. He went to his supervisor. They worked out a plan. Nobody called this gentleman. 3 months later, Peter himself made the call. And this gentleman was over the moon. In fact, he said, I am a leadership coach. I teach customer service and excellence. And I'm going to use this example of telling people around Australia what an excellent company you guys are. And then he wrote me a letter. And he said, I want to write to you personally about Peter, the collector. So when I said to Peter, how did you do this? You weren't authorized to say this to this person. What gave you the courage, the motivation, the desire to take this step? And he said, well, don't you guys always stand up and say, when it comes to the customer, and if it's the right thing, break the rules. Not the law, break the rules. And I felt it was the right thing, so I broke the rules, and I did what I felt was right for that customer. You know, in Disney, they say that when you show up at work, you are on stage. You have to give your best performance. At American Express, when I was leading from servicing, tens of thousands of people across the world would get millions of calls every day. Each of those people would answer 60, 70 calls, and each call had to be a moment of truth, because that call had to service the company's vision of being the best service provider in the world. How do you make that happen? We bought a company. In fact, I led the buying and integration of this company. It was a travel company. It was called Rosenblum Travels. And they were probably the second largest travel company in the US. And they had a reputation that when they acquired a client, the client never left them. They had a reputation that when they hired people, the people never left them. And Hal Rosenblum was getting old, and he felt that he couldn't hand his company over to someone, so he decided to sell it to American Express. And when we met him, he said, I'm selling this company to you because I know you will take care of my people. In fact, he had written a book, Employees Come First. A friend of mine, who was the CEO of a fast food retail company, he got lots of money from private equity, and they had a strategy session. He invited me to the strategy session, and we sat through a few hours of discussing the future vision and the strategy of his company. At the end of the session, he turned to me and he said, Sanjay, what do you think? And I said, you know, I'm impressed by your bold vision. Your vision is to be the biggest fast food chain in this country. But I feel it's missing something. I feel you should say, we want to be the biggest and most loved fast food chain in this country. And he said, but that's obvious. Our people know this. And I don't think he took my advice very seriously. Now, they didn't do too well, but I can tell you one reason that could have helped them was if they, the chains that they opened on highways in malls with bright colors and lots of money spent, that people who had the same motivation that their brand originally had of giving love and great service to their customers. So the lesson number 2 is all of you get your learning hats on as you think about the year ahead of you, as you think about your future, is that as leaders, you have to start thinking about how to shape the purpose and the motivation of the people who work for your company that is aligned with the vision. And if the vision is excellence, if the vision is service excellence, then you need to build a culture that is within the company that supports that excellence. Imagine having people coming to you and you hosting them in your drawing room, and you give them a great time, and everything's pretty, and the behavior is great, and your hospitality is warm. And then they stay for a long time, and they discover that actually the culture of your home is different, and they don't feel that good. Customers are your long-term guests. Don't give them drawing room behavior, that won't work. You have to give them exactly the life that you live at home or at work every day. Now, my third lesson is the story of Singapore Airlines. So, because it's such a fantastic airline, we were doing a lot of work trying to figure out how do they provide this incredible customer service. And I went there personally with the team. They had incredible net promoter score ratings, 70–80%. People would refer them to a friend. If you compare them with Virgin Atlantic, which had bright red colors and great planes, and a bar if you're in business class, and a car that will get you from home if you had paid enough money to buy a first-class ticket, their net promoter score was in the 50s. So what made Singapore Airlines so great? We said it must be their care and their love and their treatment and their skilling and their support of the people. So we went in and we met a lot of Singapore Airline executives. We met a lot of Singapore Airline employees. And it was a bit surprising for us. Coming from a large American multinational, I was used to lots of work that we do there with people, spending time with people, the appraisal system, the one-on-ones, the reward and recognition systems. And Singapore Airlines had very little of that, a very different system that didn't seem like the kinds that would motivate people the way Singapore Airlines staff seem to be motivated to provide the service that they provide. And then one of their executives took me aside and said, I need to tell you this. We don't have to do anything special here. When Singapore Airlines staff walks in to a Singapore Airlines plane, they just behave like the way they behave back at home. They behave just the way they behave in the city. They are very used to discipline, they're very used to detail, and they know that they have to follow the rules. And when we ask them to deliver a service to the customer, they do it because it's their nature, it's their habit. Last month, I spent 2 weeks with my wife on holiday in Japan. I think Anil was there at the same time. I saw him posting some incredible pictures of this trip. Now, I've been to Japan on business maybe 4 or 5 times, but this was my first time taking a holiday in Japan, so I got to get to experience Japan in a different way. The Shinkansen, which after years, every day they have 100 or more bullet trains flying across Japan, and a year later they have average delays of 30 seconds. When you go to a restaurant, everything is orderly, everybody's queued up. You can walk for miles and you won't see paper on the street, but you don't also see trash cans because everybody takes their trash home. What makes the Japanese people and the Japanese culture and the Japanese way of life so uniquely different, so disciplined, so thoughtful, so caring, so polite, so quality? So at the end of my trip, I was at lunch invited by an ex-CFO colleague of mine in Japan, Mari Saito. I said, Saito-san, what is it with your country? What is it that makes you guys the way you are? And she said, I don't know. She's given up a job and she's actually studying deeply, going deeply into the history of Japan herself. And she said, I don't really know, but I can think of a few reasons. We are one country surrounded by sea, and maybe we've had to learn to fend for ourselves. We have one language, we have calamities, we achieved 100% literacy before 1900. These could be the reasons, but it's possibly also because our leaders, the shogun, the samurai, or the emperor, for many centuries have internalized and behaved and held themselves accountable to the teachings and the preachings and the practice of the two religions that influences. The Shinto religion, which is about respecting the environment, which is about respecting nature, and Zen Buddhism, which is about inner strength, compassion, and respect for all. And it's possible that they, through their own actions, have created a sustaining, permanent culture of excellence. So my third lesson is that as a leader, the opportunity of building sustaining, permanent systems or cultures of excellence is what you will be handed or provided as you move up through your life. My final lesson is a story of Eric the Mountaineer. Now, just after the tsunami, the Southeast Asia was devastated. And we decided in February of 2005 to hold a big conference in Phuket, Thailand, just to give them a sense of confidence, just to help revive the economy, just to tell the merchants locally that things were getting back to normal. And it was a great conference, but the highlight of the conference for me was our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker was a mountaineer. He had climbed Mount Everest. But what was significant was the fact that he is a blind man. He's a blind man who climbed Mount Everest. Now, he went blind at the age of 12, and he was in despair. And so he wanted to give up. But his friends, his family got together around him, and they encouraged him to think about life with new opportunity. And one day he was with his friends trying to climb a rock wall, and suddenly he felt that calling, that feeling, that purpose, that this is where I belong. So he became a climber, and he came and he talked about his experiences, and he gave us goosebumps. He said, you don't need to see to have vision. And he said, remember that I climb and I'm famous, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my colleagues, my team members who hold two other ends of a rope when I'm climbing mountains. And so I wake up every morning to thank them and to know that I'm grateful to them. But after he spoke, I went to see him alone. I do this sometimes when I get the opportunity. And I said, Eric, my name is Sanjay, and I came here to learn from you beyond what you shared in the room with the large crowd. And he looked at me and he said, Sanjay, if you're here to ask my advice whether you should climb Mount Everest, then I sincerely advise you, don't. But then the lesson that he shared with me, which has stayed with me forever, is, but if you're crazy enough, it doesn't matter if you're blind. Thank you for listening.
So maybe invite questions both from the audience who are present in person here, also those who are present online. Present online, there are also some family and friends of Mahesh. Vineet Kaul, you are also there. Visti, you are there. Many other folks are there. So you may want to say something online, or you may want to ask a question. Anybody ready to do that online from the Zoom meeting? Out of the 18 people online, does anybody want to ask either a question or offer a comment on VS Mahesh?
You can see a hand going.
Anil, I would like
Anil, I would like to say something.
Go ahead, Misty.
Thank you. When we started this session and we first heard you, I could not agree more with your description of what Mahesh meant for those of us who worked in that first team. I'd like to give a slightly different viewpoint, though not in any sense contradicting what you said about Mahesh's magic in getting people talent up and going. I think in the first place, Mahesh could spot oddball talent. And I think you and certainly I am are qualified under that appellation. Not just spot it, but also attract it to join with, at that time, Telco Pune, or later on hotels or wherever he was. It's often the case that this kind of talent is somewhat non-commercially orientated, and therefore to bring them on board was an inspiring capability that he had. Second, you used the word co-create, and that's absolutely the right word. He co-created a vision for HR at a time when much of what was around us was industrial relations. And he co-created it with us. And as part of that exercise, he imparted a fire in the belly, which inspired these oddballs to get up and do things. You said achieve or put in 12 hours of work and achieve 24 hours of result rather than 6 and 12, I'd say. So that was the second capability, co-creating a vision and igniting the fire in the belly. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, these oddballs don't have the ability or foresight to understand the organization game, at least when they start. And Mahesh not only looked after us in the sense of protecting us from some of our least desirable business partners, but also imparted those basic skills of operating in the jungle. And I think the fact that we survived to the next stage owes much to this skill, though it may not sound as glorious as the other things that we have been hearing. But to me, these three things are responsible for the fact that he put on stream one after another person who might never have come into industry, or having come there, gotten disillusioned and quit, or if neither had happened, would have been swallowed up in the rough and tumble of competition among executives. So the fact that we survived and made something with our careers owes a lot to that initial selection and onboarding in this special sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think every word of what you spoke, for those of you who don't know, Visti writes a regular column for People Matters. You must read his column. He writes exceptionally well. And his recent book that has come out, you can check it out on Amazon. Visti Banaji, the author. Check out the book on angry birds and angrier bees, something which is quite remarkable. And of course, he likes aircraft. That's why he has that as his photograph. He is quite an aircraft enthusiast. Visti Banaji, philosophy graduate from Islam College in Nagpur, and wonderful colleague and dear friend for many years. So, somebody in the audience wants to ask Sanjay a question. Come on, the young people here. You want to ask him a question about great service experience or service excellence? Amongst the students, what is your question for Sanjay?
Anil HN is here.
Okay, please go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, but no, remembering Mahesh, he laid the foundation for a world-class service excellence and service philosophy at the Taj Hotels, and I had the privilege of working with him very closely. Almost ever since he joined, he moved to Taj, I've been with him. And we worked together for almost 12 years. And the foundations for world-class service quality and service excellence that one notices in Taj Hotels, I think he was the one who laid the foundation. And he defined an entirely different approach to people practices and managing human resources. And he defined what is a service culture, how to build a service culture. And see, this entire journey, he was also learning, and he was fine-tuning, he was modifying, he was improving his own approaches. And he very interestingly understood the difference between managing manpower, managing human resources in service companies, which is significantly and interestingly different from managing human resources in a manufacturing organizations, because 80% of employees in a service sector industry are in touch with customers 24/7, delivering a wide variety of services, not only pleasing the customers, but to delight the customer and create a differentiating customer value in such a way that the brand halo and shine improves, and the company earns a reputation for very good service. So how do you place those people in front line in such a way that they dazzle and delight the customers? Where do you hire them from? Source them from? How do you induct them? How do you train them? And what is the transformational service that they're able to provide? Anticipatory and warm service that they can provide and blow the mind of the customer in a way that customer says, wow, this is fantastic. And we never expected this quality of service. And I can give any number of examples of how employees have responded at very crucial times, and when the company is in a crisis, or when there is an extremely difficult and a nasty customer, how he has become a loyal customer of Taj, and how he has started praising Taj. I can give any number of examples. The most ideal example is when the way employees responded during the terror attack. And you don't have to repeat that, all of you are aware of that. And the enormous sense of commitment and ownership that employees demonstrated towards the company, during that very unfortunate incident itself is a great example. It underlines how a very powerful world-class service culture was built in Taj, and how it stood by the organization in its time of crisis.
Ajay Srinivas, head of HR for Taj Group of Hotels. Ajay Srinivas, HNS in mentee of Mahesh, and we were working with the Taj when the terrorist attack took place. So I was with HN Srinivas in President Hotel while the attack was taking place. And we were all together, and there are some, I've also written about that, and I called Anjali Raina from Harvard to join us because our home was next door. She was part of the group, also part of that whole thing was unfolding, and we saw firsthand that experience of Taj. That's what led to that case study at Harvard on the Taj case study, because originally started the case study. And then the movie came out of that called Hotel. But I cannot just help but say one thing out of that incident, that that evening, because HNS told me, Anil, please break the news to Karanveer Khan, the general manager's parents in Chandigarh, through your sister who lives in Chandigarh. Before TV says that they have been killed, somebody should break the news in person. In any case, that evening, when I met Karanveer's parents,
I very thankfully remember Anil rushing down to Bombay. He was in Delhi, I think, and Anil came down to Bombay to be with
Karanveer's
me.
parents were not there, and you had asked me to send a message to my sister. And that evening, I went and met Karanveer's parents and Karanveer and the guest house.
Right.
And now, what do you tell somebody who has just lost his wife and children? And so I just gave him a hug and sat down, and there was complete silence. And Karanveer's mother spoke to me. Anilji, she said, when the terrorists were in the lobby, Karanveer called me and said, Ma, a part of me wants to run after my own wife and children who are at the other wing, in the old wing of the Taj. But the other part says, I am the son of a soldier. His father was General Khan. How can I leave my own colleagues and run after my own family? I hope why Guruji will forgive me for making this choice, Karanveer said. And that evening, HNS, I remember when I came to President and I met so many people coming back from President's Hotel who had been evacuated. And they told the story about Thomas Verghese. Thomas Verghese and his staff formed a human chain around everybody, and all the guests were evacuated. Then Thomas held all his staff to go out. And when he was the last person leaving, he was shot dead. And HNS, next day, I remember you are telling me that Mr. Tata and Mr. Krishna.
Yeah, his family met Ratan Tata. Ratan Tata requested me to get the family members of all the terror victims, who laid down their lives in Taj Hotels, the employees, and Thomas Verghese's wife, his two sons. That is, one was 14 or 15, the other one was 11 or 12.
And HNS, the interesting thing you told me is, when Mrs. Verghese was told that we didn't know your husband was such a courageous man, he said, even I didn't know that he was courageous. All I know is that he loved the Taj and he loved the people.
Absolutely.
This kind of love for your work and where work is worship. This is the co-creation of V.S. Mahesh and H.N. Srinivas and all these amazing people in that company. I want us to remember that. Because Swami Chinmayananda, it is his birthday today. He said, when you are inspired by higher purpose, work becomes worship. Then you rise. You don't fall in love, you rise.
Absolutely.
Yes, H.N., please go ahead.
I was saying she was crying because we had the funeral, the cremation was done that day morning of Verghese, and that evening Ratan Tata, Krishna Kumar and others, they met the family of Verghese, and Mrs. Verghese, she was a 37, 38-year-old lady and two children, and the mother had been flown down from Kottayam. They originally from Kerala, so she was also there. 4 or 5 of them were sitting in front of Ratan Tata. She was sobbing, obviously, having lost her husband in a very unfortunate incident like this. And she said, "Sir, I'm not unhappy. I'm happy you called us and you're talking to us. My husband loved the Taj. He loved the Taj so much that he considered that his first family, and we were his second family." So in her own words, she was explaining this. And she said he has sacrificed, working, being in the Taj and trying to protect the image and brand of Taj. And in a way, I'm happy you called us and you're talking to us. I never knew that he's such a great man. I never knew that he loves his job so much. And she broke down and she was crying. And she said, what really moved me was, she said she will put his photograph in the living room and she wants her children to follow those values, ethical values, ideals, and work ethics. And she said, money comes and goes, but our family, me and my children should follow these values my husband has left for us to, as his legacy. And she broke down, and we our eyes turned wet, when she said that. And after they left, Ratan Tata, we could see in his eyes tears, and he said, "She look at the way she talks about values. She is a living legend, example, a live example of somebody who has practiced values." And some of us put up in our back area notice boards, core values of so and so company, so and so company. How many of us understand and how many of us actually live those values and follow? Here is a clear example. Somebody has followed and in the process has given up his life.
Thank you, HNS. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
More comments of people both present in the room. Any question, any comment, and also some people present online. Yes, you
Sanjay, you mentioned about this English helper and taking from 100 schools to 100,000 schools in that to government schools. And we know the teachers in government schools, how demotivated, demoralized they are. So how do you create that kind of a service excellence in such a community and help them turn around? I know the English helper has made a tremendous impact. So what did you do and how did you bring about this transformation?
Can't say to have brought about the transformation, but we are trying. And I think we have approached the problem using first principles. So if you think of a government school student, teacher, and in fact, I'll give you an example of Odisha. We're just expanding right now after having run a successful pilot in 4,000 of their aspirational high schools, government schools. But before we got the contract, which was in March, we had to do a pilot in 30 schools in 3 districts. And we had to demonstrate that there was affinity for the program and that students found there was improvement in the students' proficiency. So we went and did a baseline test. And in the baseline test, we found that in grade 9, only 15%, 15% of the students could read the textbook or was grade proficient. And 70% of the teachers were also not grade proficient. So imagine the classroom transaction that is meant to result in learning outcome would really be a transaction of frustration for both sides. Think of a teacher walking into a class and opening a book. And I've sat in more than 100 classrooms across the country. And think of the teacher saying, follow me, I've opened the book on page 5, and this chapter is about the monkey and the crocodile. And the teacher reads, the monkey said to the crocodile, and about 70 or 80% of the class are looking for the word the. Because English phonics is crazy, right? P-H-E-Y, but this the. So the first thing we did, Yogesh, to your question, was to take the book and make it visible and demystify it using technology that enables reading of the book in a multi-sensory way and make that repetition and reading possible. The teacher now had the attention of the students. And because it's the book, ideally learning science says that with these students, give them something else to preach them. But it's not practical in a government school to add more work. So we give them the textbook, we make it available during normal class hours, and we make life easier for the teacher and better for the students. So it's 101 of fundamental change management and is using technology to achieve that. When you make people successful, they smile. So for great service excellence, You need will, but you also need skill, and if you have the skill and you're successful at your job, then you will be more willful, right? And so back to the teacher. They are much maligned because they have a tough job to do, sometimes they're not equipped to do it. And if we help them become more successful at their job, we see enough evidence of teachers actually doing their job with greater joy, with greater desire, and with greater results. Hopefully that answers your question.
Teachers, they don't support you, right? They don't support you, right? You make them successful. You deliberate that system of that lesson in the class. In the process, they are also learning. And the kind of something that it brings about, that's phenomenal. In fact, I have used it to one of the schools in Jharkhand and Ranchi.
Thank you, Yogesh. I want you to also self-police.
Questions, comments, your favorite memory of V.S. Mahesh? And of course, questions to Sanjay about the theme of the talk today on service excellence. Pradeep Kapse, do you want to recall your memories of V.S. Mahesh?
Go.
Sir, we have.
Well, I take you back somewhere in 1976. When we were youngsters, this was our first job. And lot of energy in us. And that would create a lot of conflicts. People who were very educated and that we wanted to be very different. So in that situation, I would land up fighting with a lot of and even for that, they would ask me the last what is the battle. And I'll go to this. I go to Mahesh, I mean, first place is always mighty, always being quiet, and full attention. So, one thing at the moment is to he puts you down, relax. Then, he's a fantastic listener. He can tell what's wrong. So, I narrate the story for you. Then Mahesh says, okay. So, you want to do this in time, right? Yes. So, do you think that the person who followed was correct? What is correct? That is why I did it. You re-analyze. So you analyze, and we have to analyze. Then we create that kind of environment that opens you up, and then we let you speak. And then we come to silent, and then you relax and understand. But this is not the best. That's like a great way of doing things. So you go back, think about it. The next day when you go back, you will say the books. Then you are a different person. So that transformation will be very smoothly, very smartly, and I get all that thinking within you. So that it's not that we advise you to work and do something which you cannot do. So you create that kind of self-discipline, create that kind of self-understanding, and give that inspiration and confidence to you that you can go back to solve the problem. So I think that was a phenomenal question, and I think this also I think fortunately for doing nothing, whiskey, something, and then there are many. There are a whole bunch of Chinese people who are there who have chemicals and that. And you always thought that you were the and you know it. That you are the one who is going to transform this organization with your. There's nothing, but to really make us feel that it's to accomplishment and you know, I think that was and that was I think the biggest thing I think the whole entire department with part of it was. And I think I remember Mahesh always, his shoulder was always there. It will always be to be on somebody's shoulders to regain our confidence at what we are doing. So I thought that ability to conceptualize things, to clarify all the issues in your mind, remove the problems which are there in your mind clearly,
and make you go and do things. I think that was me. But if organizations have people in a charity like this, I think the organization automatically gets done. Because people are burning desire, burning desire to perform. So youngsters particularly, yeah, anyway, and then grow, you tend to become very educated. But the youngsters are the real performance, really of life. So I think listen that yes, the things humiliated by the people who are here. Thanks a lot.
I think for the benefit of some who were not able to hear Pradeep clearly online because they were saying they couldn't hear him clearly. The last point he said was that Mahesh had this uncanny capacity that he would really connect all the dots, convert complexity into something which is simple and remove the cobwebs from your head, and had this wonderful ability to get you to therefore think for yourself what you needed to do to take responsibility to become a better person. So thank you, Pradeep. So thank you. Let's give Pradeep a big hand. Any comment from any one of you? Mahesh was a professor at Soil in the last part of his innings. He was teaching in Soil when unfortunately he developed this problem, and we unfortunately we lost him a few years back. But even in the few years he came and taught here, I think the students experienced something amazing about not only a practitioner, a thought leader, an author, a teacher. And I remember going to University of Buckingham to visit Mahesh a couple of times. And the way Mahesh and him had enabled every student to become family. The amount of personal interest Mahesh took in the life of every student of his, that many years later, I would meet his students who were with him in Buckingham University, and they would say, he and him, I hope you are listening. Both of you co-created the space in which many people discovered their best selves. I can say I just got married when I was 22 and Neera came. And the way him and Mahesh, you welcomed both of us into the family. And the way you made us feel special. Yeah. Okay. So in any case, that was something very, very extraordinary. Any comments from any one of you about this evening's experience, about the way Mahesh lectured, anything? You've had a long day, 9 a.m. to now, so you're thinking, after so many years of working, now you're there in Soil on the first day, and we have put you under pressure right up to 6 p.m., right? As I've said to you this morning, but in any case, I just want to thank Sanjay for your very special, address. The story I tell about Sanjay, he was a successful global leader, and one day at the airport, he asked a question to himself. I've done what I wanted in terms of reaching name, fame, authority, global responsibilities, money. And now what do I go and do to make a difference for things I care about? So that's what made him move back to India and, take this responsibility. He's a frequent writer in the Economic Times. You may have read Sanjay Gupta's articles. You may have also seen the amazing work that he does, not just an English helper as the CEO, the founder CEO, with the co-founder of this company. But millions of children are learning to speak English using artificial intelligence background and learning to do that. So the difference he is making to millions of lives in this country is something quite remarkable. We are fortunate to have his counsel, and he's a member of our board. And whether it is I, who was a colleague of his Aisha, or it is now Sahil, who's the president, who looks forward to his dialogue with Sanjay. I think Sanjay, in the very wonderful story that you shared today, you captured the essence of what service excellence is about. And I'm so happy that today on Gurudev's birthday, we are celebrating V.S. Mahesh, because Mahesh and him were also wonderful students of Swami Chinmayananda. And I'm so happy that on your very first day, we are able to share the special memories of a wonderful colleague with you on the very first day. So thank you very much, and we will sing the national anthem before we depart. And after national anthem, there are, I hope by now, samosas are there. Samosas and chai hopefully outside. So, okay, let's do the national anthem. Turn the camera to the audience so the people online can see that this was not an empty room. There are 150 people standing in the room, right? Because they were only seeing themselves on the screen and not seeing the wonderful face of the audience. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.